Thank you, Amin, for that comprehensive overview of both what Aramco is doing on the climate side. It fits a lot with what was said yesterday, so I think this is quite interesting. I do want to start first with the first point of your speech, which was the attacks on Saudi Aramco. I think anybody that saw the videos, the pictures, the aftermath of what happened, and then heard your press conference 48 hours later, was skeptical that this could actually be achieved, that you could return to the production that you were at by the end of September, missile strikes, drone attacks. But yet, you've announced you've done it ahead of schedule. So I think it'd be important to sort of talk through how you're able to achieve that, because I'm not sure other companies would have been so successful.
Thank you, Alex. First, let me describe how the whole thing happened. It's a Saturday morning. You can imagine at around 3:30 in the morning, more than 20 drones and rockets hitting the two major facilities in the kingdom, happening at the same time, simultaneously, which is Abqaiq and Khurais. Abqaiq with a maximum sustained capacity of about 5.5 million barrels per day, and Khurais with close to 1.5 million barrels per day. So it's very significant. We talked about an interruption on that day because they were producing, you see, this is their MSC. Our maximum sustained capacity is 12 million barrels per day. But in that particular day, the two facilities were contributing 5.7 million barrels. That production was down. Our ethane production went down by almost 50%. Our NGL capacity also went down by almost 40 to 50%. So it is a major attack happening on a weekend, Saturday at almost 3:30 in the morning. Thanks to the emergency response, the training, the development of our people, we always say we have a 99.9, 99.8, 90.7% over the last 3 years in terms of reliability, but our reliability stems from three things. First is our well-trained people. Second is our resources and how do we manage them. Third is our infrastructure. What was attacked is our infrastructure. But number one and number two were not attacked. Nobody was injured, thank goodness. Not even a small injury. Everybody was safe. And as long as we had number one and number two, we can easily put number three, which is the infrastructure, back on operation. It took us 24 hours to start Khurais at a lower production, and it took us about 48 hours to start Abqaiq at a lower production. The good thing about Saudi Aramco is, in addition to the emergency response and everybody knowing what he's supposed to do in an emergency, we have drills and all of that and scenarios for, including a doomsday scenario, if you can imagine, to handle certain things. Of course, not to that scale. I honestly cannot say we had a scenario where we have 10 major fires and 6 fires in one plant. These are spheroids with 1 million barrels. But our people, even at 3:30 in the morning, with no management, by the way, the leaders were all at home at this time, were able to depressurize the system, which has saved the plants, because these are spheroids. If you don't depressurize quickly, you will burn these spheroids and the compressors and everything around them. They depressurized, because every second counts when you have an accident like this. They depressurized the system. They cut the feed for all of these plants because it comes from so many other plants. Abqaiq is 5.5, so many gas feeding into Abqaiq. They cut the feed immediately, within minutes, and the deluge system worked. We put the fire hydrants. Our firefighters were assembled in the facilities, and all nearby firefighters' capability were brought in. The fires in Khurais were put down in 5 hours. the fires in Abqaiq in 7 hours. No one can do that within that 7 hours in hydrocarbon with oil and gas and NGL and all of these things. And after we put off the fires, I think the issue became is the restoration. And we do have a business continuity system, what we call an Aramco. What if scenarios and what do you need to do afterward? An incident like this, a major incident like this. And basically, always in Aramco, at any day, you will have 4,000 to 6,000 contractors working in different plants. We have 100 plants all over the kingdom. All of them were, all the contractors in the kingdom were made available to the 2 managers that were impacted. In Abqaiq alone, 2,000 contractors mobilized in 24 hours, knowing what they are supposed to do. It's not like bringing people and putting them. Everyone knew what he's supposed to do. The work started in parallel. So we took each spheroid, each compressor, everything that was impacted, we treated it as a project by itself in order to finish the works and the restoration activities quickly. It took us 10 days, because we brought the facility 1 week earlier than the target to bring all the facilities at a production level of around 11.3, which is much higher than the production level that we were at during the attack. And we said at that time that 12 million barrels will be restored by November, and hopefully end of November, and hopefully earlier. But as I said, without the emergency response, without the business continuity, without the skillful people trained, not only operator, technician, firefighters, but even engineers, project management. We know how to build things. We have done a lot of mega projects. So for us, when we focused on these 2 facilities and we gave our people the full resources required, we made everything in the company available to them. All the contractors, anywhere, even in other projects. Our procurement engine worked. We have in the US, we have in Europe. Within, I would say, 48 hours, we had materials if we were short of any type of materials. Everything worked like a clock. So you need to be prepared, I always say, and we always drill based on that. But as I said, this is a test that we never thought that we'll have that magnitude in terms of hitting 2 facilities at the same time, needing to respond to them all at the same time, and doing the work to restore in 2 major plants. Abqaiq is not a symbol. You know, if you look at Khurais is the size of a country. Production, Khurais, 1.5 million is the production of a country. Abqaiq, 5.5 is maybe with 2-3 countries together. This is the size of the facility that were attacked.
Yeah. I mean, so if production capacity is at 11.3, so what does that leave your spare capacity at right now? What are we looking at until the end of November?
We will bring it back to 12.
But currently, compared to production, 11.3 versus how much you're producing?
Production, we don't talk about production. It's, the production is around, what the target is 9.9 that we receive from the ministry for the month of October.
Okay.
This is how much we need to average during the month, you know. The good thing also about what happened, none of our international shipment was interrupted. When we say we are reliable, we made sure they received their shipments even during the attacks. Not even a single, we could have called a force majeure. These are huge attacks, rockets, and people with a small incident they call force majeure. Imagine the size that happened to Saudi Aramco. Not a single shipment to our international customer was interrupted. We didn't call a force majeure, we supplied. And reliability continued as is. If you go to our OSPAS center where we monitor everything, you will find out the reliability did not change. This is very important for us. That's why we had to come 48 hours after the attack to calm the market. We know the prices will, because the market talked about 5.7, but if you look at it in a maximum sustained capacity, basically it wiped your spare capacity. 5.5 and 1.5 is much more. We had at that time, the minute of the incident, 5 million barrels only. And we had to calm the market and assure them, shipments, everything is going back to normal. Some people even questioned our capability to bring everything by end of September. They wanted to send auditors. We said, you don't need to do that. We brought it 1 week earlier. So, and you cannot hide production levels, you know. It's, we have customers around the world. They take their shipments in 24-hour basis.
Well, take it from us. I mean, I think, you know, as an organization whose job it is to cover these events, the messaging around the event was actually quick and quite strong. And I think the market, I mean, there were doubts, of course, as I've mentioned, but they did buy it and you did deliver, and I think that's part of it. But I want to ask you about your other favorite topic, which is the IPO, which everyone always asks you about. I think it wouldn't be appropriate not to ask you in this case. You've been in London. I think we understand you're talking to some of the financial institutions that could be part of the IPO. Has there been any concerns from potential investors in the wake of this attack about the IPO? Have they asked any questions?
Well, no, you know, when we sit with investors, this is the highest, the most profitable company in the world, by the way, the highest free cash generation anywhere in the world. Our KPIs and performance indicators, it's not only in cash generation and investment capacity and excellence on all of these, but also on safety and reliability, on technology, on carbon intensity. I shared with you some numbers. These are audited, by the way, also. And these all are elements important for any investor when they look at climate changes on their mind and seeing our numbers when it comes to methane and CO2, looking at our, as I said, safety, technology, performance, and our strategy. It's all important and significant. Of course, they asked about what happened in Abqaiq and Kharis. And our answer, it is a testament of the strength of the company, if anything. This is a company that they tried everything. They hit the east-west. We're back in no time. They hit Sheba a month earlier in August. Unfortunately, I was during my short leave. I had to come back. And we were able to bring it back in no time. They hit Abqaiq and Kharis with 20 rockets and drones and you name it. And we were able to bring the facility back with no impact on any of our customers international, and at the same time, no reduction in our revenue. Our revenue was not impacted. We were able to supply. We have storage facilities here for crude in the kingdom. We have it outside the kingdom. So there was no reduction in the revenue of Saudi Aramco. It's a testament of the capability of the company to respond regardless of what you throw at Saudi Aramco. The other thing is, I think we brought up to everybody, the investors, and I think I'd like to share it here, is that this is, as I said in my remark, this is not an attack on Saudi Aramco and Saudi Arabia. This is an attack on the global economy. Producers, the prices will go up. You need to think that way. If 5 million barrels, 7 million barrels disappear from the market, the producer, the prices will go up. They will not go down. All what you have to do is to take it out of the market for a couple of months and see what will happen to the prices. Model it. The prices will shoot. And the global economy will be impacted. This is an attack on the global economy. This is not an attack on Saudi Arabia. And everybody needs to understand everyone will be impacted. If the interruption, that if we were not able to restore the facility back to normal. So the capability in the company, the well-trained, skillful manpower, the emergency response, not only tested in Abqaiq and Khurais, tested, as I said, in Sheba and the East-West Pipeline and other incidents or accidents, show that this is a company that has all what it takes to ensure reliable production, maximizing cash flow to the investors, and at the same time, look at safety, environment, technology at the same time.
Now, I want to go to the audience for some questions in 1 minute, but one more thing on the IPO. Will it happen by the end of this year, do you think?
Oh yeah, I missed the IPO. The IPO is continuing what we said. It's a decision for the shareholder. The company is ready. What happened? If anything, it strengthened the company position when it comes to the IPO. We have no issue to proceed anytime, we are told. It showed more value, that the company is worth much more than, just by sharing numbers. We have been tested not once. We have been tested now 3 times, one after the other, and in every time we bounce back stronger. So what we told the investors, the minute the shareholder decide on the timing, we are ready to list Saudi Aramco. No impact on the IPO whatsoever.
Okay. One more question, because this is a question that we hear a lot, and I'll put it to you right now. Many people ask, they say, why is Saudi Aramco doing an IPO? Why are you doing it? You are a giant company that makes a lot of money for your shareholder. Why are you doing an IPO?
I think, you have to go back to when His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, talked about Vision 2030 for the kingdom and the need to develop multiple engines to drive the economy. The economy is driven by one engine, one mega engine, which is the oil and gas. And I think it is good to have, for a more sustained economy over the long term, you need multiple engines. And they talked about privatization as one of the pillars for Vision 2030. And with privatization, you need to privatize everything. And you cannot take your crown jewel, which is Saudi Aramco, and say, I'm not going to privatize this one. This is good. I'm going to privatize the other sectors that we have. So the idea is that everything will be put on the table. Of course, the amount of what will be, they talked about less than 5%. It's still small, but it's an indication that everything is being privatized. Transparency is good. Sharing our data. If you ask me as management of the company, we are happy to share our data. This is the first time, by the way, with investors and with the public. We share our data. Before, the numbers I shared with you about how much it costs per barrel, for example, lifting costs $3. I can say it now. Before, it was difficult for us even to mention these numbers because the shareholder was telling us, you are not a public company, you share it with the shareholder. A lot of things happened as a result of the listing, which is good for the company. For example, and also it gave the company more weight. They told us you cannot list without auditing your reserve. And they told us in order to list, you need to do also something good, which is the carbon intensity need to be audited because your numbers and reserves is too good, and carbon intensity is also too good to be true. So they need to be audited, both. So we said, fine. It took us 18 months to audit our reserves. We got more than 99-point-something% accuracy on something that we have been doing for 85 years without a third party auditing us. So it shows this company has system, has principles. They know their job. They know what they are doing. Carbon intensity, also, we said, these are our numbers, methane, and they said, no, but we need to take sniffers and gadgets, and they go to your pump and compressors and flare system, and they measure. And we said, fine, but it took 6 months. Why? We have too many plants in the kingdom, too many plants. And the numbers also were extremely accurate. Actually, they gave us a better number than what we are carrying in our book. It's further, when we share all of these things with the investors, or it validates the principles, the standards, the good work that's being done for 85 years without somebody, third party, auditing your numbers. Always the shareholder, which is the government, told us, when it comes to reserve, we trust you, even though our number didn't change. And a lot of people did not trust us. 260 billion, a lot of people questioned that, even in the kingdom. But when the auditors came, 30, 40 people for 18 months looking at every reservoir and modeling everything, and they came up with the same number that we have been sharing and saying, these are our numbers. Everybody understood that this is a company that understands what they are doing. They have the right people, the right skills to do all of these things. So for us, transparency in terms of sharing our data, our records, and all of these things is something good. It's now we are sharing all of these things with the investors, and we are proud of what we have achieved so far.
So what you're saying is it's worth $2 trillion. This is what the message
I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay, questions from the audience. Please identify yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Halima Croft, Royal Bank of Canada. You've told an amazing story about resilience of your company. I'm just asking, what can the international community do to help protect facilities in the region and to deter future attacks?
Great question.
I think for protect, you see, emergency response, a lot of people, when they do drills and they have an emergency response, sometimes they take it seriously, sometimes they do not take it serious. You need to take your emergency response and the drills, so many of them that we do, you need to take it very serious. You need to make sure also you have the right skillful people. My point is the first responder to these fire were our operator and craftsmen. It's not only the firefighter that put the fire. It is everybody. And without the right training and skills, so people need to be ready. They need to instill all of these skills on everybody working. They need to work as a team. Infrastructures, it's good to have a redundancy. It is always good. Sometimes in the midst of cutting cost and all of that, sometimes you look at a redundancy and you say, why should I have all of this redundancy? It's not required. Spacing, put things closer to each other's, and that would hurt you if, God forbid, something happens. So redundancy is important in terms of, and also business continuity. You need to have a business continuity. You need to have an if, in case something happened to this spheroid, this compressor, this motors, what is it that needs to be done? And we do have a business continuity scenario for everything. We look at plants, God forbid, this is knocked out completely. So, and looking at provision, other than redundancy, when you look at these things in that level of details, and we do that a lot, then you would say, okay, I have a connection here and a connection. Can I have another connection and have a provision that was not going to cost us a lot, but you would need it one day? And when you need it, it's worth it. For example, in Abgig, we have a super dump. We call it a super dump. We never used it for 50 years. People were doubting. Even we finished on the TNIs, maybe this is a secret, just a couple of weeks back on this thing. And people doubted, do you need this super dump? This is drain everything quickly to the flare. Because it took us a lot of time to do the TNI on this. And we said, keep it. They said 50 years we didn't use it. You know, Abgig is a very old facility. We said, keep it. Do the TNI. And look at what happened. It was very instrumental in depressurizing all of our facilities. Flare system, where some of them were knocked out, for example, in Sheba. If you don't have a contingency to divert to another flare, and you rely only on one main flare, you are going to be in trouble. Because the facility were hit on the trains and at the flare system. So building all of that and making sure at the same time you are very commercial, and we always proud to say we can do all of that with a focus on our cost per barrel and a cost per million BTU. If you can't do that, your shareholder will always allow you to do all of these things.
Next question. Here in the front row.
As a result of these attacks, are you planning to divert more exports to the West?
The East-West pipeline is ready, it's available. Before the end of the year, it's 5 to 7 million. Before the end of the year, will be at close to 7 million barrels in terms of capacity. So it's a significant capacity to take from the east of the kingdom to the west side of the kingdom. And it has all the terminals, everything ready. But this is not something you built a year ago. This is something that we have been doing for the last, as I said, 30 years. And we kept expanding it. So it is not oil, it's oil, NGL, gas, you name it, that has been built over 30 years. The company is ready to make sure to shift crude from east to the west.
Good. We probably have time for one more question. Right here.
Mr. Nasser, thank you very much for, my name is Ziad Laban. I am a retiree of Saudi Aramco after 35 years, so I'm biased. I think it would be interesting for the audience to learn how large the company is manpower-wise, and of that manpower, what is the percentage of Saudis running the company?
Globally, we have about 76,000. In Saudi Arabia, we have about 68,000. And out of that, 88% are Saudis. This is
Thank you. I mean, I have one, because we've talked a lot about other things, but not the energy transition. But I think the one question people have on Saudi Arabia is, you have a ton of reserves. And people, I mean, if you saw the McKinsey presentation yesterday, there's sort of the potential for oil demand to go down to 81 million barrels a day in the next the next decade or so. So with countries with huge amounts of reserves, this raises the question of, will you ever produce all the barrels in the ground? Now, I know that the case in Aramco is you're the lowest cost producer. You will probably always be able to sell your barrels no matter how much oil is required. But I'm wondering if you guys are updating your thinking on how you produce oil in order to deal with potentially the energy transition issues that are coming up.
If you, there is a new IHS report. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a new one, just came the last couple of weeks. It shows a base case at close to 100 million barrels, 90-something, and growing until 2050. And the liquid production from Saudi Aramco will go to 16 million barrels by 2050, in a base case. And it showed also what you call it a transition case. The renewables, electrification, electric cars will kick in. The amount of production will go by 2050, instead of 100-something, 106, 107, I don't remember now, to 72 million barrels by 2050. Saudi Aramco, based on their assessment, will be producing 15 million barrels. Why? We are the lowest cost producer. That's no doubt. A lot of marginal barrels will go out of the markets before the barrels from the kingdom. Second, you've seen the numbers in carbon. We are greener also. So if you are talking about climate change, our numbers are there and audited. If you're talking about the cost per barrel over the long term, everything is there. So it's a company. It's also, it shows, and based on their assessment, that we are driving costs down. It's not really going up in terms of looking at the future. So you will be producing more barrels, much more barrels in any case. It was impacted by only 1 million barrels between the base and the transition case by 2050.
Yeah.
So we still we need to find more reserves, to beyond 2050.
So you will have to expand beyond 12 million barrels a day someday, potentially.
Well, per the concession agreement, there are 4 touch points with the government. The royalty, taxes, the maximum sustained capacity is decided by the government, the shareholder, the government, based on the concession agreement. And the production levels the target for every month is also decided by the government. So MSC, if the government decide that there is more demand, I'm sure they will look into it. But based on our reserves and our capability, we can, of course, meet whatever is required.
You can go to 15 if you had to.
You have
Or
the
16.
reserve. You've seen the reserve. Our reserves is 6 times. People were talking about Ghawar going down and all of that. Ghawar, I told them 48 billion barrels of reserve. It produced 3.8 million barrels today, maximum sitting capacity. If you combine the reserves of 5 of 6 of the top companies, it's less than Ghawar, and producing only 3.8. So even in existing fields, if you want to expand your production, you can expand it big time. But we always look at depletion and make sure our depletion rate is very low because it helps us to manage our reservoir and our water cut. But we have extensive amount of reserves, and we keep adding. You see, the good thing about what's happening in the kingdom and with Saudi Aramco is that we replaced every barrel that we produced. That's why the question, and we had to go to the auditors about our reserve because people said every year you have the same reserve. It cannot. You produce 3.5 billion and you carry at the end of the year the same reserves. We are able to find and replace whatever we produced. And that hopefully will continue.
Great. We have to leave it there, but big thank you to Amin Nasser for his comments today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.